Good morning. I call this meeting of the GBRA Board of Directors to order in accordance with the Texas Opens Meetings Act, Government Code 551, and certify a quorum of the board is present. Have all the notices been posted?
Yes, sir, they have.
I wish y'all would keep Director Matthews in your thoughts and prayers. He is not with us today. His brother has been placed in intensive care in critical condition in San Antonio. He's absolutely sorry he's not here this morning, but we keep him in your thoughts and prayers. I'm going to ask Oscar if you'd lead us in the pledges.
We have it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Let me begin by saying thank you everyone for being here. We're interested in your comments. We recognize how critical this is to you. Although it would probably be discounted by some, there's not a member on this board or a member of the staff of GBRA that isn't absolutely pained by the decisions we're having to make. And let me also say, there isn't a member of this board, nor is there a member of the staff that isn't fully committed to working with everybody to look at a long-term solution that hopefully we could have the lakes reconstituted in some form or fashion and be available for the next 100 years. We're going to move the agenda up to number 7. That's why most everybody is here. And so with that, I'll call on Kevin Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. And as y'all are aware and the audience is aware, I made a decision last week that it is very unpopular, and I get that. It was a terrible, terrible thing to have to decide. As we've been talking about since the catastrophic failure at Dunlap, we have to be realistic about the facts that we're dealing with. And as a responsible organization, we can't keep our heads buried in the sand. What we were concerned about is the hinge points at the bottom of the gates. When you go back and watch the video at Dunlap, you can see how it kind of essentially popped up and went over. And that's our concern. That's the condition of those. It's at the bottom. And the steel has been buried inside concrete underneath 20 feet of water for 90 years. And so it's in terrible condition. What we did since the last board meeting is we used inside and outside engineering firm to go and essentially do a destructive analysis at Dunlap to figure out exactly what happened. What that involved is basically cutting through the concrete and wood using a diver to get access to it. And you can see it just out front. We had to move down here. That's the condition of the steel that we're dealing with. Their expert opinion, and that's what Charlie's going to talk about next, is that this probably wasn't the first hinge to fail on Dunlap. It was probably the most recent one. And so we're in a situation of knowing that we have a dangerous gate, or gates, all up and down the hydro system, and somebody could get hurt, somebody could get killed. That's what keeps me up at night. So we have video, and we're going to go through that, of people crawling up and down the gates, up and down. Y'all have taken action to further restrict people not supposed to be around upstream or downstream of the gates, but people still do that. We cannot close off the waterway. So last week I made that decision, and it was terrible to have to make that decision to go ahead and lower the gates. Y'all have given me that authority through policy. So this isn't an action item for y'all to vote on. This is a briefing and a discussion and public comment But basically, the decision was made, and then the lowering will start on September 16th. So kind of some housekeeping is, like I just said, I wanted to make a few comments. I'm going to invite Charlie up to talk about the report. It is public. We are live streaming this board meeting and all future board meetings. And then I'll have Jonathan come up and talk about a little of the other safety concerns, and then we'll open up to public comment after that. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would invite Charlie Hickman up.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and board members.
Morning.
So just as a reminder before I talk about the report, I don't think there's any way that you'll ever with 100% certainty know exactly what caused the failures at Lakewood and Dunlap, but based on the assessment of our consultants, these are the failure modes that we believe occurred, which are two different things. The member you see circled in green, that's the tie bar, and that holds the upstream and downstream pieces of the dam, or the spill gate rather, together. And that's what the failure mode at Lakewood was believed to have been, is failure of that tie bar. What was believed to have happened at Dunlap is failure of the hinge, the upstream hinge, which is circled in red. And so again, the function of those upstream hinges is that's where the upstream gate leaf is fixed to the concrete structure and allows it to rotate. And so we sat down with our consulting engineers and discussed with them everything we've been able to look at in the past and asked them, can you recommend to us what's the best thing we need to do to try to inspect these gates further and try to determine their useful life, if any remains. And so again, their recommendation was, well, let's start off with that hinge first, see what we can learn about that, because that's where the biggest uncertainty is. And then depending on what we find there, we'll continue on with further inspections. And so, the report that you should all have a copy of, and it's available to the public on the GV Lakes website, is that Black and Veatch report that highlights that inspection that was done. And so there's three main components that make up that hinge that are highlighted in the report, and I'll use the terminology that's in the report. But you have this is upside down or not? You have this piece right here that actually is embedded way down in the concrete and has a hole in the top to accept the hinge. They refer to that as the casting in the report. There's a piece of the gate that has got a hole through it that I'll show you some more pictures of. That's referred to as the hinge plates. That's the part of the hinge that's fixed to the gate itself. And then you have a pin that goes through both of those that allow those pieces to rotate. And so to give you an idea of what that all looks like, here is a picture of the failed spill gate at Lakewood back when that was retrieved from the waters back in 2016. And so while the hinge was not believed to have been the initial cause of failure, the fact that that spill gate ended up in the river channel downstream, that led to, as part of that failure, the hinges did give way. And so what you see across all 5 of the hinges on the piece of the spill gate that failed is that those hinge plates that are actually fixed to the dam or to the spill gate itself they all sheared off. All 5 of them, you can see that they sheared off. Here's some zoomed in pictures where you see that the end of that hinge plate just sheared and gave way. And so as a result of that, you can see the pieces that remained fixed into the dam at Lakewood are shown here. All 5 of those, it was the same thing. You had the 2 castings still embedded in the concrete, and the pins were all still in place. So that's pretty clear evidence of the shearing occurring on the hinge plates that are fixed to the gate. And fortunately, we were able to look at this at Lakewood. There's some flow control measures available at this site that are not available at Dunlap that allowed us to temporarily lower the water level enough to take these photos and do this type of inspection. But at Dunlap, the water flowed over for quite some time, and there was no way to control that. So the first thing that was done is we actually had some divers go out. Towards the end of July, flows finally got low enough where it was safe enough to send some divers out and try to look at just what remained on the dam itself. And so they went across and felt their way across all 13 of the upstream hinges at Dunlap, and they found this very same condition as you see in the photo on the right. They didn't find any evidence of damage to the concrete. The castings were both in place, and the pin still remained in all 13 of the Dunlap hinges in the spill gate number 2 that failed. So what that suggests is that it was the same type of failure where the hinge plates themselves sheared off at Dunlap. So that was pretty clear evidence of that being the failure mode for the spill gate that failed. But that really doesn't tell us everything that we'd like to know, so the recommendation to get, I guess, the most comprehensive assessment available was to go on to one of the adjacent spill gates and cut off some of the hinges and let's get a full view of the entire hinge assembly. So that's what was done. In order to accomplish that, you see there was about a 6x3 hole cut into the upstream side of the gate by the divers, and they retrieved, this about 2-foot section of the bottom of that truss that makes up the gate with the hinge still intact. And so they had to cut off the castings and a piece of the gate. And so I'll walk you through what they found on each of those 3 critical components. Again, the castings go way deep into the concrete, but they cut off the piece that was sticking out up into the water. And so looking at that inspection, the condition of this was still very good. You didn't see any significant signs of wear within that casting. However, the pin showed significant signs of wear. You can just visually see the amount of section loss that was observed on those pins, which really reduces the structural strength of that whole entire assembly. And then here is a view of the hinge plates themselves. You can see, the way those are put together, it's not one solid piece of steel due to the construction methods at the time. It's 3 half-inch steel plates that are riveted together. And you can see that on the picture on the left. And then the picture on the right, where somebody has their hand there, kind of shows you the section that was believed to have failed and sheared off during the gate failure. And if I can turn this on, I have no idea how to do it. Is there a way you can switch it over to this? The divers, as they went across gate number 2, do I have to push something else?
We've lost our computer feed.
Yeah, that's because it's going
But we should still.
Breakdown in communication.
Well, I don't want to delay us any further. I don't necessarily need that. I mean, these are the pieces of that hinge plate that were retrieved by the divers off of gate number 2. On 4 of those hinges, they were able to, well, there we go. They were able to recover some pieces. So you can see the corrosion of those pieces that were actually retrieved from the gate. So this is what we're actually relying on to hold that gate in place. Can you go back to the presentation now? Thank you. And so another thing that I'll call your attention to is you see this kind of notch that's cut into that rotational piece. That's actually by design, and I'll try to illustrate its function. And so looking at the original drawings, what those notches are there for is that on the pin itself there's actually a square section that sticks out, and it's by design, it fits into those notch sections on the hinge plates themselves. And so what that does is it fixes the rotation of the pin to the gate itself. So as that gate goes up and down, that hinge pin should be rotating not around the gate, but through these castings. And of course, based on what was found out there, you can see that those notches have also worn or given way and are no longer functioning as designed. And so what that's effectively done is now the spill gate hinge is no longer functioning as the original designers intended. The gate is now actually rotating around the hinge pin itself, which is not part of the original design. So that's also contributing to a lot of the work you see on the hinge pins. And so I'd say, the 2 main reasons that the engineers have made the recommendation they've made, and the recommendation was that these hinge assemblies are no longer adequate for continued service. It's based around those 2 main findings, just the sectional loss of the pins themselves, which is significant, and then the fact that the hinge is no longer rotating per the original design. So that's the main findings of the report, and based on those inspections, they were able to surmise, without any further investigations, they felt that these gates are no longer adequate for continued service. So that's the end of what I have. Is there any questions of the board before I turn it over to Jonathan?
Thank you.
continuing on from Charlie's report, the engineering coupled with the growing public safety concerns is definitely what's leading the decision behind moving forward on the dewatering. The past 25 days, and really since the failure of Dunlap, working with our operations staff, hydro staff, and control room, we've been looking to implement additional signage, buoys, audible warnings, and other notifications. On an hourly basis, our control room currently pans the areas around the dams for activities. And in the past 25 days, we've had about 40 different occurrences that we've monitored that included about 75 or 80 people in those instances, and about a dozen of which law enforcement was called. Unfortunately, not every time law enforcement is available to respond. Many of the times, a lot of the activity is transient, so they're either moving upstream or downstream of the dams, over the dams, and we'll have some footage of some activities that we've captured on tape. In addition to the recreational activity that we've seen upstream and downstream of the dams, we've also been victim of 2 criminal activities. Potential theft, actually at H5 in the powerhouse. Folks believe since that's not generating anymore, it's de-energized, and so there's attempts at stealing some of the copper and infrastructure there. And then also actually at Nolte, we've caught some surveillance activity where individuals actually climbed our tower, moved our camera, went down into the dewatered spill gate at Nolte Island for a period of a few hours overnight. So there's increased activity, there's concerning activity, and so we've been working with law enforcement on both of those. Additionally, during the time since our last meeting, we did have an updated failure model at McQueenie showing 1 spillgate failure similar to Dunlap. Those findings do show a 6-foot rise just downstream of the McQueenie Dam in the first few moments after a single spillgate failure, and about a 1/2 foot decrease on the McQueenie upstream side. So we still have substantial concerns about recreational activity both upstream and downstream of all the dams. So this is just a compilation of a few snippets. These first few show one of the most concerning occurrences, which was just after our last board meeting on July 20th. A group of about 7 kids and a dog came up to the dam and walked across the spill gates and went downstream and swam for some time. Parks and Wildlife was able to deploy and cite them and return them back. What we're seeing is camping activities upstream and downstream of Nolte. Unfortunately, law enforcement jurisdictions really don't allow for effective enforcement, and due to resources, both county and state level, we have difficulty in ensuring any level of safety. Conversations are continuing with local and state law enforcement. Here's some of the screenshots from the overnight when they climbed up the tower. So, and we have a lot of recreational activities downstream of McQueenie where folks do rentals and still come up there on a pretty regular, continuous and continuing basis. Over that time, we've continued to have meetings with the county, sheriff, emergency management, and the game wardens about accessibility of resources that could be deployed in the meantime leading up to September 16th. Additionally, we're working with Texas Parks and Wildlife on developing an aquatic resource relocation plan, which is designed to help mitigate fish and mussel kills during the dewatering activities and after. We're continuing to stay in contact with state, county, and local leadership and elected officials. We have sent 1 certified letter to all property owners along the lakes affected by the dewatering. We've sent up a follow-up letter to residents along Lake Wood and Lake Dunlap, updating them of different activities and ongoing conversations. as well as direct communications with the lake associations and maintaining meetings through the Guadalupe County Task Force. We will be sending additional certified letters this week to the property owners outlining the drawdown, the anticipated drawdown schedule for September 16th and the week following. We've also set up a website, which this isn't working, the gbLakes.com, where we're trying to centralize all of the information, also facilitating frequently asked questions with the lake associations. This is where those updated information will be provided moving forward. Additionally, information related to the engineering report for the hinge inspection and a couple of videos of Charlie demonstrating the functionality of the hinge are available. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, for public comment, I do have a number of folks signed in. I apologize in advance if I mispronounce your name. I will call everyone up individually, and then if your name does not get called and you'd still like to have public comment, please just approach the mic towards the end. First I have is on the list is Molly Kelly.
And I yield my time to Thomas Board.
My name's Thomas Belton. I'm going to read something that Robin Dwyer sent since he's not here. He spoke at the last meeting. Gentlemen, I asked you at your last meeting not to turn your allies in solving this difficult problem into your adversaries. That request has fallen on deaf ears. And now you have chosen to follow a course of conduct which will have both sides spending significant time and resources fighting each other when they should be focused on seeking a rational and expedient solution to a permanent fix to the dam repair issue. I implore you not to start this war with your decision to severely damage our schools, community, economy, and way of life for no rational reason. Please step back from the brink of war and rethink this course of conduct. Thank you, Robin Dwyer. Since I got 2 minutes left, I'll go ahead and give you my side of this too. I spoke at the last meeting as well about the damage you're doing to people like me. And I don't want to sound selfish, but I make my life on the thing. I hear could hurt somebody. I hear if fails. What will happen is my job is gone. My way of supporting my family is gone. 36 years to get to this point is gone. Everything I love, care for, worked so hard to get to in my life is over if you take this away without a plan to fix it. Don't drain the lake, close the lake. You did it after 2010, the flood, was it 10? The summertime? Either way, you can close the lake. If I run a stop sign, the county's not liable. If people are going past your barriers and dams, that's Darwin's theory. To me, if you're that stupid to go down there, you deserve to get Unreal. The thousands of people whose lives are going to be permanently affected because of this. I'm not talking about the memories, the 4 generations of people who are losing their lake. I'm talking just strictly the jobs, the economy, the money. There's lots and lots and lots of people like me. And I'm pissed. It's ridiculous. Y'all said you were going to work with the communities, and I feel like that got thrown out the window. It's not right. It's not right.
Catherine Batcher.
I'm going to pass.
Fred Shaw.
My name's Fred Shaw. I have a home on Lake McQueen. A year ago, almost to this date, GBRA came up and said, we're going to drain this lake or drop the level 2 to 3 feet, because there's an engineering company and a construction company in the area that are hard to find, and we can get after and fix this problem, and we anticipate it can be fixed in 1 year. It's been 10 months. I know Dunlop came about shortening things, but where is the report of what they have been doing the last 10 months? What has been going on for the last 10 months? Because they told us they thought that it could all be fixed in 1 year and the lake would be back up. Hadn't happened. Another comment I would make, everybody has a perceived liability of what can happen if the dams fail downstream, okay? What about the quantifiable liability if you drop the lake? People are going to lose their bulkheads. 100-plus-year-old cypress trees are going to die. You're going to create a desert where we've got a beautiful recreational facility for everybody. End of comment. Thank you.
And just briefly on that, Mr. Chairman, as you all are aware, we were doing emergency repairs on the various gates for a while.
Could you please
This is public comment too, Tony.
We were doing emergency repairs on the gates for a while. When Dunlap failed, we had to pause and revisit that for obvious reasons. Chris Davis. Sorry, Chris Davis.
Morning. My name is Chris Davis. This is my family. I own and operate a business on Lake Placid. I also live on Lake Placid. The gentleman kind of spoke to the economy impact, but also my property value is going to drop. And I wanted you to witness, this is my family. This is what you're going to affect when you drop these lakes. You're going to kill my business, kill my property value, and I'm not going to be able to support my family. So I just wanted to show you, this is who you're affecting by dropping these lakes. Thank you.
Lynn Campaign.
I'll cede my time to J.C. Rollins.
Hi, everyone. I'm president of Meadow Lake Association, Meadow Lake Nolte Dam Association, recently formed. So I just wanted to give a shout out to them as a recently formed organization. I'm going to start by just saying that reading the Sunset Commissionary Advisory Report, one of the main actions was to create a system to handle complaints. And so what I'm asking today is not just to sit here and listen to us, but to actually action some of the items that are coming out of here so that they can be followed through, they can be documented, and they can be closed out. With that said, I know everybody knows the economical study, so I'm not going to beat it into the ground, but I do want to shout out to the coalition, the Four Lakes Coalition, that came here today. I think it's real evidence that this is not just the property, this is the community, this is business owners. We're doing this as a community, so I'm tired of hearing it just affects a few of these, rich property owners. That is not the case. This is a community thing that it affects. Same thing, I ask that the economic and environmental impacts are that we wait to drain the lakes until those studies can be performed. And then second to last, then I would ask that we know as an engineer that things do not wear the same. I agree that what has been observed at Dunlap is the cross-section area loss and the corrosion that's been shown is catastrophic. But it does not mean that every dam wears the same. So if you are going to drain them, I'm asking that you action to look at the other hinges on the other gates to make sure that that's where we stand on those other gates, because there's a number of things, fatigue issues, different debris that hit it in a different way that caused a crack propagation, that happened 5 years ago and now it has just failed. So, I mean, I could go on and on with things that could have happened. The last and final thing is that looking at these gates and getting bids for the fabrication, these gates are only, you got to trust me on this, but they're only $300,000 to build from a fabrication standpoint. They're only $500,000 to engineer. So if you will give each lake $1.5 million, in a year's time, the engineering, the fabrication will be complete, and the lakes, I guarantee, will find the funds to do the dewatering and to install it. I mean, those are solutions that can happen quickly and be done, and people can have their lakes back in less than 18 months. The only thing that's cited about the bear trap gates are the fact of reliability. I just point back to the engineering report that gives recommendations on exactly how to handle those, the water intake into the dams to make them very reliable. And with that, I'll end it. Thank you, guys.
Bob Dotson.
Gentlemen, I define that term, by the way, as polite, genteel, honest, trustworthy, and businesslike. I believe GBRA has a credibility problem. I suspect that you already know that. And I implore you to work on improving that as we attempt to find solutions and implement those solutions. The problem with that is that how are we going to work together with somebody that is found to be untrustworthy? It's my understanding that GBRA has engaged Hilco in Austin, a very powerful lobby firm. I kind of wonder why. We've seen this, the GBRA video cams, and that's certainly disturbing. If GBRA is so concerned about loss of life and danger to the public, I wonder why you're not policing it. I don't think that it should be the responsibility of local authorities other than GBRA to police that dam to make sure that there aren't hazards to the public. It's your dam, it's your waterway, and I think you ought to protect it. I thank you.
Mr. Pritchard?
Mr. Chairman and GBRA Board, thank you for giving us the opportunity to comment on some of the decisions that have been made, and hopefully you'll listen today to some of the solutions that some of the people have already offered. In follow-up to the previous speaker, my concern, and apparently everybody else's concern, primary concern is loss of life, loss of property. And we are all concerned about that too, but you've heard how many times we've talked about the economic damage that's going to be done, and the lives are going to be negatively affected. We have an opportunity to police those dams, I think, much, much better than has been done to date, and let those opportunities for the ignorant to reach those warnings. But the warnings have been so, insubstantial. You showed us the signs, the buoys that were out. Those are attempts to stop people from losing lives. I mean, that's just so shoddy. But again, I'm not surprised from some of the shoddy decisions that have been made before. So there are opportunities to better secure those areas. If they need to be moved back, if they need to be moved forward down below the dams, then let's do them. but let's not affect everyone's lives both above and below those dams and all the businesses that we've talked about. We can do a much better job, almost anybody can do a much better job of policing those areas. Would you please consider that instead of draining the lakes to prevent a possibility of a dam break? Thank you.
Bob Worth.
Good morning. My name's Bob Worth. I've been coming out to Lake McQueenie for over 50 years. I hate to admit that long, but we have a house on Lake McQueenie upriver. But I think, I agree with everything everybody else has said, but I think there's a couple of factors that I would like to point out. One is that all of the owners associations are well down the road in forming water control increment districts. We would then, if it's approved and voted on, we would then have taxes that would go to help rebuild the dams. If these dams are completely drained now, several people, including the county judge, have said that the values could drop as much as 50%. You've cut our borrowing capacity in half. Our intention is to go to the voters in May for that. So you've cut what we can contribute towards the dams in half, which I think is a travesty. The school districts are going to really be hard hit, and the state's going to have to come up with that extra money because the school district can't afford to give it up. Based on my observation, there's been no attempt in recent months to make the barriers on these lakes greater. I mean, the buoys that mark the difference to not go towards the dam are the same ones that say don't go into shallow water at Lake McQueenie. You can buy buoys like they have in expensive marinas that have cables across them. Those are easy to do. You can move the things back. We can get people to patrol them. You can give tickets. But the other thing, and I appreciate the fact that you've gotten the single dam breakage report. I'd love that. Is that public record yet? I'd like everybody to look at that. But what I haven't heard is any what I'll call incremental measures, because McQueenie's been drained for 2 feet for about a year. If you dropped Placid the same 2 feet, your 6-foot wall of water now becomes 4 with that lack of a better engineering report. So the incremental lowering of one lake versus the other lake, or McQueenie another foot, is going to significantly change the water volume. So I implore the board to instruct the management of GBRA to work with the owners groups to figure out safety solutions so the lakes are not drained. Maybe lowered, better secured, but don't drain them all. Thank you.
Elizabeth McFarland.
Hello. A little nervous. We have a property on Lake Placid, and what I've discovered over the past few weeks is that you all at GBRA, when you took over our lakes, you all had a responsibility to maintain those dams, regardless of whether or not they made any money on the electricity. And yet, you all have not maintained the safety of those dams whatsoever. You knew in 1969, 50 years ago, back when Bob started coming to the lake, that those dams needed to be replaced, and you did not. You knew in 1994, thanks to the Sunset Commission, that you needed to replace those dams, and you did not. And then Lake Wood collapsed. Still, nothing. 2018, you're told again, nothing. I'm a mom, and as far as I'm concerned, all my children get taken care of as they need to be. Your water brings in tons of money, and yet because the dams don't, you feel fit to not do anything. That's appalling. You have shirked your responsibility, and you ought to be ashamed. Thank you.
Doug McEwen.
Who'd you call?
McEwen, M-C-E-W-E-N.
My name is Doug McEwen and I live on Lake Placid. I want to focus on some of the things you guys have said here today and historical data that should predict future. I couldn't find on the website what the river flow was from the Lake Wood Dam failure, but would like the board to address that if you know what that was. When Lake Dunlap failed, the flow was 11,000 cubic feet per second. Once one gate fails, it takes the pressure off the other gate, so the possibility of more than one gate failing simultaneously is infinitesimal. At 11,000 cubic feet per second, GBRA's own flood chart for both Placid and Meadow Lakes shows there will be strong currents and only the evacuations of Area A are called for. That is recommended between 10,000 and 20,000 CFS, so this is at the lower end of that range. I would again ask the board to address if anyone was injured or killed when either Lake Wood or Lake Dunlap failed. At the time those dams failed, there was no additional safety measures in place, and unless I'm mistaken, no one was seriously injured or killed. When Lake Dunlap failed, the initial response was to move the no-travel buoys down and upriver. On Lake Placid, the 78 bridge is where you guys said you were going to move them to, and you did, and that seems to be the perfect place because that's where the lake widens out. While it's an inconvenience, it won't put many small businesses out of business and rob property owners of their value. In looking at the GBRA site and what you've said today, part of your justification is that the buoys won't work because people will violate them. I'm not trying to be facetious, but if we use that logic, we paved roads so people could drive faster. We made laws against people driving under the influence, texting while driving, or speeding, and they still do it. So would you de-pave all of the roads so that people can only go 10 miles an hour and can't therefore hurt themselves? The extra step of dewatering the lake is done according to the website to appease the good conscience of the board. No one person or group's conscience should ever be the standard on denying a community. For 100 years, the legal standard has been to warn of a known danger. That's it. We have gone far beyond that. Let's don't resort to the individual's thoughts or standards. Let's use the state-recognized standard. No one can object. It's the law, the duty to warn. So with that, I implore on the board and the members to go back to moving the buoys up and downstream, taking people out of harm's way, but allowing these communities to still thrive and the property owners to have their value. Thank you.
Ken Heber.
Good morning. My name is Ken Huebner. I'm a resident here in Seguin. I don't live that far from Lake Placid, and I have clients that are business owners, and I have potential clients that you guys are impacting. Not only them, but you're impacting me and my families here. I've heard many stories about what's going on, not only just along the lakes and the rivers, and it's painful to sit here and hear how all this is impacting everybody, not just those that are on the lakes. I just ask that from here, we need more transparency. We hear it all the time. Big government, small government, claim there's transparency, there's no transparency. Notes and options. The lady that just spoke about what happened after Lake Wood, Lake Dunlap. I mean, Lake Wood was 3 years ago. A lot of this stuff can be handled. So I'm going to draw some questions that probably have already been addressed internally, but just some questions here. When the gates were installed originally, what, if any, maintenance plan was established? I mean, you don't put that in place without having a maintenance plan. Look at all the bridges that are failing in our country, and they're not underwater. All right, so Knowing the cause of Lake Wood in 2016 and the countless failure of bridges and steel structures exposed to above water elements, what proactive actions, if any, were discussed and or taken? What I asked that before we adjourn today, that we get a commitment from GBRA that we will postpone the draining as of September 16th. There's too much economical impact to those that live on the lakes, to their values of their homes and businesses, and it's going to impact quite a few of my own clients. So I just ask as a member and resident of Seguin and this community that we would have the intentional fortitude to stand up and say, we hear what you're saying, and we were going to postpone the draining of the lakes September 16th until you can prove to us that that's absolutely necessary. Thank you.
Tim Bates.
Good morning. Oh, here it is. Good morning. My name is Tim Bays. I'm the second vice president of the Meadow Lake Nolte Dam Association. I have property on Nolte Lake, on Meadow Lake, above Nolte Dam. One of the things that I wanted to talk about today was the environmental impact. We all kind of spread out and decided to talk about different things, and that's the card that I drew. Over the past 5 or 6 years, GBRA has given away donations and grants to nonprofits to the tune of about $4 million. And one of these grants was to a gentleman who was studying the cypress trees in the Guadalupe Valley. We saw his story on Texas Country Reporter before church one morning. He goes up and down the river coring these trees, and he can read the core, the rings and the cores, and tell what these trees have been through. I cannot tell you how many cypress trees currently are on the lakes that we're planning to dewater later this month or later next month. But I can tell you that I did speak to an arborist in San Antonio, and he tells me that those trees will die. You can't water them from the land side because it will soften the soil and they will fall into the river. So out of one hand, we're paying a man to study these great trees that are only, I mean, golly, you've seen these great cypresses. They're awesome, They're only in a small section of South Texas. It's all along the rivers. They're beautiful. You've jumped out of them your whole life, and you've seen them everywhere from Uvalde County to here. It's just awesome to see those trees. So we can't water those trees. We can't save those trees, but we've given a grant to a man to study them. It just doesn't seem absolutely correct. So the other gentleman I talked to was a septic engineer, and he cautioned that the lowered water table from the lakes will decrease pressure and cause some of these septic systems to leach into the gravel band instead of forcing them to evaporate like they were designed to do. This is certainly going to cause water quality issue for our downstream neighbors who drink it. Gonzales, Cuero, Victoria. That is definitely a concern for them. Lowering because of safety reasons, I have to go back and say I see 2 deputies and a sergeant here today, and we're not below the dam. I don't think we're too dangerous, but we can bring 2 deputies and a sergeant here today. These gentlemen are certainly off duty, and we're paying them. GBR is paying them. What about posting deputies in these areas where we have trespassers for the peak times? I'm sure most of the incursions happen on the weekends. For safety, we had the Lineman's Rodeo down at Nolte Park. at Nolte Island the other day, last month. It's in the shadow of Nolte Dam. It's not really dangerous, so you wouldn't have let 300 or 400 people go down there. I would like to close by saying thank you for your time, and I would please hope that you would consider all of the alternatives to dewatering the lakes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Chris Gosch, G-O-S-C-H. Gosh.
Welcome. Start off first. Not sure how many people didn't make it in today, but have you guys considered maybe a larger venue to where you can actually hear all the community voices? We've heard a lot of good ideas today so far on possibilities to save, protect our area, and you guys hold it here in the Annex building. Wonderful building that you have here, but if you truly can consider the community and want to be a part of it, like any business should be or utility should be, please consider a larger venue from here on out on any of your further board meetings. Second, have you considered a temporary dam, sheet pile on Lake McQueen in particular? Not necessarily right in front of the dam because it's fairly deep there, but along the shallow areas. You can run 1,100 feet of sheet pile. You can drive it as deep as you need to.
I'll do it for free or I'll do it for cost.
There you go. I'm in the insurance business, so it's all about risk management. I'm not sure that you guys understand insurance or risk management. Sheet pile dam, 1,100 feet of it. You can run it at the current height of the top of the water right now. 1,100 feet should not increase the water height in any high flow situation. You can de-water behind that. That protects Lake McQueen. Look into Lake Placid. I have not been out there in a while, but you can consider that. Second option behind that. Sure, none of you guys have explored this. Engineering 101. Have you considered, instead of buoys, maybe a wave attenuating device? It is a long string of cables that you can string from one side of the dam to the other side where your buoys are. If you don't want people and boats back there, please consider it. Again, I don't think that you've considered all possible options other than dewatering at this particular time. The sheet pile, again, unless you're Evel Knievel, I don't think you're going to ramp a boat over the top of it. Maybe when I was 16. As far as the gate repairs go, why is it not possible to sister steel get in there to where the castings are, if they're in good shape? Why can't we not remove that particular portion of the truss section, sister steel to it, and replace the pin? Did the pin come before the gate, or did the gate come before the pin? That's my question. Please follow up in writing on all of these. Do you honestly believe that you support your community? Again, what is your end game with these dams? Mr. Patillo, you said hopefully we'll put water back into the lakes at some point. Hopefully is not very encouraging to me. If we come up with the money for individual dams, are we going to be able to replace the gates?
We have, you made a couple of comments related to things that you don't believe have been considered, and I can assure you those things have been considered, number one.
Could you speak louder, please?
Sure. And number two, the staff has been working and will continue to work to find solutions to reconstruct all of the dams.
You guarantee that? To replace the dams?
Did you hear what I said?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So what I said was we're working to find the funding mechanism to be able to do that.
So funding is the only holdback there, and then they will be replaced.
Funding is a critical issue for that. But thank you.
My point is, will they be replaced once funding is achieved? So if we have an individual funding source for a particular lake, will you allow that lake to be, that dam section to be replaced?
We have been working with those lake associations, and exactly, yes.
Yes.
We want to do that. We work with y'all to do that. But the challenge is the funding.
Is the funding. So in writing, we're going to have a lake as soon as we have funding.
That's the goal, absolutely.
Have you considered hiring your own staff of police or individuals to monitor that? And have you also considered what the effects would be if you lower the lake another foot on all those? Thank you.
Grace Mueller.
Morning, I'm Grace Miller, a retired teacher, and I live in McQueenie Lake with my family. This has been our family residence for 25 years and a family homestead of Dr. Edwin Miller since the early 30s when the original plots were sold. Helen Mikey is also here as a longtime resident whose family, Louis Kepsel and Willie Kaler, were also original lake dwellers and developers of the area. Charles and Clara Miller obtained their property back in the 30s as well, and Kip and Kim are here. I'm sure that there are many more of people who have long-time residences in this area, but these guys are my neighbors. McQueenie Lake is a part of our heritage. After spending extensive time reading through the various materials about your organization and its history with the Guadalupe River Basin, I find two things in my heart. One, what is written on paper does not coincide with what you necessarily do. And two, I feel that many of the actions in recent months have been predetermined for a very good while. One of the most blatant paradoxes in your materials is posted in the About GBRA section of your website. There are candy-coated words like stewardship, conservation, and protection of water resources, and that includes the Guadalupe River Basin. I feel the opposite is occurring in respect to the lakes in the basin. In your vision statement, it says you support the needs of a growing population, economy, and healthy environment. Again, this does not ring true with drainage. In the mission statement, it says you will provide quality operational service and a commitment to promote conservation. In regards to the basin dams, this has been minimal at best for the past 40 years. As the page continues to values, it states that they're steadfast in preserving the environment, dedicated to the vitality of our communities, protecting water supplies. In operational excellence, it goes on to say that there's a safe, reliable, sustainable water supply, hydroelectric generation, and recreational opportunities. In the certified letter, you write that our long-term goal is to preserve lakes and ensure their sustainability for generations to come. How is it possible that when you are abandoning the dams, draining the lakes, and relinquishing any responsibilities to years of negligence by GBRA, and then you still call us stakeholders? You can see my confusion as to the current actions, as they appear to be directly opposed to what is written on your website. Secondly, I feel your actions in draining the lakes and sudden interest in safety, or should I say liability, have been predetermined since dams have not produced expected income for some time. You have been aware of safety issues and maintenance problems for many years, but the community is only now aware to the true extent. And I'm going to skip down a little bit. This was alluded to by Mr. Stinson, that the decision from the first board meeting that we last month, that the decision to drain the lakes had been made. Safety is a big concern, it always will be. We have always taken care of our lakes. I think that due diligence has not occurred. In closing, I feel you are anxiously awaiting to wash your hands of this. However, the name GBRA and those all involved therein have had their hands stained, and that stain will not wash off.
Heidi Kinney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Heidi Kenny, and I live on Lake McQueenie. My husband, Pete Thompson, first began coming to the lake as a young boy in the 50s and ran his small business, PT Ski, out of the ski lodge for 20 years. After all the rhetoric I've heard and read, along with the recent letter to drain the lakes, I felt I had to address the board. In reference to the letter we all received, if you are being honest and transparent, the first sentence of the second paragraph would have read, GBRA's liability is our top priority. If safety was your priority, years ago when you had concerns with the structural integrity of the dams, you would have made public this information. If you had, we would have worked together to develop a strategic plan and not be in this situation today. But GBRA chose to ignore the potential threat of a spillgate failure. You failed to inform the top tier of your organizational chart. Who is the top tier? All of us in this room today and all of the counties that are going to be impacted because of your failures. We are your constituents, your public. If safety was your priority even today, I feel you had done more than just buoys in the water. How about big imposing signs in the water? Danger, you can be seriously injured or even killed, do not enter. Or maybe, as we've heard already, hire people to be on patrol or work with the local lake associations to patrol during the peak season. In the state of Texas, cypress trees are heritage trees, and as such, it is unlawful to do anything that will damage the trees. I would need a permit if I wanted to remove one in my lake, and most likely, it would be denied. Your plan to drain all the lakes will not only damage thousands of cypress trees along the entire riverbank, but kill off many. This should not be allowed. I'm well aware that some board members and GBR management were not around during the last 10 years or so. However, Mr. Chairman, you have been here on the board since at least 2010, along with key personnel on the management team. You obviously had knowledge of issues with the aging dams, but chose to say nothing, do nothing. And in closing, I want to refer to Kevin Patterson's letter in your anniversary publication. He states, there is still a limited amount of water resources. That means we have to become more innovative in our conservation efforts. Our commitment to preserving and enhancing the ecosystems we are operating in must also take on a new level of proficiency. But I am more confident that our group of GBRA managers and professionals has what it takes to design and implement water resource solutions our district communities will need to continue to prosper in the future. Mr. Chairman, if this is not PR propaganda, then take a step back, sit down together with all of us, and come up with a solution to keep water in the lakes now, minimize the safety risk, and develop a long-term solution to replace the dams. Thank you.
Ms. Salis, S-A-L-L-I-S.
Thank you very much. I'm in an awkward position here as a retired teacher. I know that you can please some of the people all the time. Abe Lincoln knew it. We all know it. The people that have spoken so articulately about their lakes make me wonder why on Lake Gonzales we have been so quiet. We are not as many, and our homes do not cost as much, but they are our homes. And I appreciate people who are on boards. I don't know how lucrative it is, but I know I did a lot of things as a public school teacher that seemed like the right thing to do, not necessarily the economically smart thing to do. So I trust that everybody here wants what's best for everybody there if we can come to terms. I'm very proud to be in a room like this where citizens are heard and where people politely listen to each other, don't stand up and throw shoes. You know, it's America, it's Texas, and it's Gonzales County to me. We used to be 20 minutes from a loaf of bread before the Valero came in, and there's a reason for that. We left Austin because Austin left us. I don't want to leave Gonzales County because my leg leaves me. When people say, we'll provide the labor, we'll provide the money, just let us go at it. I understand that that's logical and possible, but I also think that we have a board of directors for a reason. GBRA has elected, paid, whatever, professionals on board for a reason. But I'm pretty sure that you don't want this kind of conversation to go further and get uglier. So I want to thank you for working with the people that are willing to work with you. This is not an insurmountable issue, not when this many people have this much interest and energy. God bless you all for being here today. It's an amazing thing to witness. Thank you.
Steve Pritchard.
seeing their kids at ski school this week. It was a great week.
That is the line I've used in my ski school for the past 25 years, Ski Masters of Texas. My name is Don Ennis. I'm a Vietnam vet, by the way, and I'm very proud of that. My wife and I, Julie, have run Ski Masters of Texas on McQueenie for the past 25 years. During that time, we have overcome all sorts of obstacles. We have worked diligently and hard to make this work. We have entertained thousands of kids, not only from Texas, from all over the United States and internationally as well. We even had the Prince of Jordan there one time. Nobody knew that because we keep the identities of the people that come to Ski Masters silent, because we want them to relax and have a good time. Anyway, we've been doing this a long, long time. The lowering of the lakes will completely destroy our business, destroy my legacy, destroy the institution that Ski Masters is on McQueenie. And I'm very, very upset about that. I'm also upset because I'm a realtor. My wife is a realtor also. We got into the business because we drive down the lake and our clients, would ask about homes. And we were proud to sell them. We both got our licenses and everything. And now we have clients that are canceling their homes with us because they fear they will not sell because the lake will be lowered. So speaking for all the realtors, this is a devastating thing to happen to them. So congratulations on that to everybody. You're destroying my life and my wife's life. Thank you so much. I would like to address the safety issue. Well, I still have 1 minute and 12 seconds left. Safety. Let's talk about safety. We are probably the safest organization on the planet. We have gone 25 years with never a loss, never an accident, nothing. I look at the lake and I think, well, here comes Labor Day. If the problem is so severe that dam failure is imminent, why are we still out there? Why are we even going to operate on Labor Day weekend? My God, we shouldn't even be out there. There's a lot of things, I appreciate the comment about the highways and people breaking the law. Let's talk about the national parks. There's a volcano underneath Yellowstone, yet people still go there, right? Some people break the law there. They are punished, for it. They go and they talk to the animals and they go stand next to Old Faithful and all that sort of stuff, and that's wrong too. I think if you're stupid enough to disobey the law and get close to the dam, then you should suffer the consequences if there is a failure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carl Jenkins.
Good morning, Chairman Patillo and directors. My name is Carl Jenkins. I'm the Vice President of Seguin ISD Board of Trustees. I've heard a great deal of concern from my constituents in regard about how dewatering the lakes can affect the budget of the school district. Other board members have heard their constituents as well. We've also heard apprehensions from citizens throughout Guadalupe County about the possible negative economic impact to the community. I certainly understand the complexities in the situation and potential dangers if the dam should fail, but I encourage you to be a part of the decision-making process. Please be active, transparent, and prudent decisions that can have dire consequences. This action will have a direct impact to the county, city, and the school district. I want to put a face to the Seguin ISD school district. Seguin ISD has 1,100 employees, over 7,400 students, many of whom will be impacted directly or indirectly by the actions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Richard Thielen. Jim Williams. Sorry, I cannot read the first name. Mr. and Mrs. Jackson.
John is coming.
So,
My name is John Jackson, and I have a place on Lake McQueenie. We've been there 8 years, and have had a great 8 years there. When we bought the place, our realtor didn't tell us about the dam failures or possible dam failures. Probably 30 years ago or 50 years ago, the folks that have places, I don't think have heard about any life-threatening dam failures. So how did this all get started is beyond me. That this information wasn't out there. You didn't have a pile of money sitting around to replace or fix the dams. You didn't let anybody know. So there's no transparency that I see. By the way, this gentleman here who quote-unquote made the decision, you look pretty rested for someone who's been staying up all night worried about it. I don't understand it. You look good. You must be a drug fan. Number two, I have no idea what you guys do. I guess, I hate to say this, and I hope this doesn't hurt your feelings, but I guess are y'all like bumps on a log? That you have no decision, you allow one person to finally make the decision for all these entire communities? It's beyond me. So I don't think this is a way to run a company. I don't think this is a way to treat your community. The Friends of Lake McQueenie have worked, or tried to work very hard with you folks to come up with a solution after, you know, your ineptitude in replacing or fixing or telling us that we have issues with the dam. We've come up with a solution along with some of the other lakes, but you want to shut it down now while we try to go through the process to go forward and make the dams and make these communities viable. Don't understand it. I don't know how you guys operate, but it's not the way businesses run. And obviously, you guys have no understanding of how businesses are run. So with that, y'all have a great day.
Diane Roberts.
Hello, Chairman. This is my second opportunity to speak to this group, and I'm going to send, if you will accept my apologies for my side, I'm going to talk to you all. I have been on the lake for over 20 years, Lake McQueenie, and when you offered to sell us the dam, I'm so sorry I wasn't there June 8th, because I would have bought it from you. The other thing is, we can't control other people. If other people are going to go and not obey the signs that you have put so far away we can't see them, and little buoys that look like wakeboard, you know, it's a wake zone. That's not dramatic. That is insufficient. And I have lost a child. I know the pain of someone who you love dying. You can't control people that will do things that are illegal, like has been said, like what we do is warn people. That's what you could do. But draining the lakes, we want to stop. Save our lakes, don't drain them. And how could you a week ago sit, and I don't know if it was you, sit with board members of Friends of Lake McQueenie and say, oh, we're working with you, we're doing this, we're doing, to their faces, not even telling them the truth. And the next morning at 7:30 in the morning, calling the board chairman of Friends of Lake McQueenie. Come on, guys. You are not straight with us. We deserve, this community, multiple communities, deserve honesty and forthrightness. Come on, guys. This is crazy. I'm sorry my language may be a little bit colloquial, but this is we've got money that we can work with all of the dams. We can get them done. We've got people that are willing to volunteer and provide solutions for safety and keeping the lake there and saving the trees. And I think there's even a turtle that may be endangered if you drain the lake. So please, for my angel son Mark, who's enjoyed this lake so much. Please do not drain the lakes September 16th. Thank you.
William Finney or Finley?
Had a fellow, excuse me, about a month ago, a fellow told me to always be prepared when you speak in front of a group. I'm not prepared, but I'm here.
Thank you.
If we use what the executive director said earlier, I heard there was a failed wreck on Interstate 10. So I think we need to talk to TxDOT about shutting Interstate 10 down. It's the same thing. I mean, there is danger anywhere. I haven't been up here very long. I've lived on the Guadalupe River all of my life. It's dangerous to live on the river. It's dangerous to try to run cows on the river. But what y'all are talking about doing is going to impact so many people and impact the economy of Guadalupe County tremendously. And I think that y'all need to rethink this deal before you drain the lakes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lauren Smith?
I'm going to say something that might shock a lot of people in this room. Most homeowners insurance policies currently do not cover foundation damage due to a drop in the water table. If the lakes are drained, most surrounding properties will experience a drop in the water table. The pressure will significantly change underground. Is GBRA prepared to answer to homeowners and insurance carriers for these probable damages? When I called each of you board members on Friday, July the 12th, before each of your personal contact information was systematically removed from GBRA's website prior to the last meeting, I was told by one of you, Mrs. Smith, why are you participating in idle gossip? I think you know which one of you said this to me. I was trying to bring this precise concern to you and all of you board members with that call. I doubt anybody in this room would think that I was participating in idle gossip. By a show of hands, may I ask, who is this a concern for? Your property and your foundation damage possibility? Also, GBRA should not have departmentalized their business entities and quarantined the dollars from fixing the dams. You could have planned and raised water prices slowly to raise revenue from those and other sources to build a fund for much needed better repair and or reconstruction. It was short-sighted on your part to claim we lose money on hydroelectric, therefore we can't reconstruct. It has been your obligation, and it doesn't end because of an internal accounting profit and loss center. I ask you to see Section 59 of Article 16 within the Texas Constitution. As read within the context of the section, one of the authorizing legislation which reads, "The creation of such district is hereby determined to be essential to the accomplishment of the purposes of Section 59 of Article 16, And this is in the Constitution of the great state of Texas. When the Texas legislature authorized GBRA to exercise the following powers, rights, privileges, and functions, it creates an obligation to do so. See the first line of Section 4 for the authorizing legislation that states that the powers, rights, privileges, and functions of the district shall be exercised by a board of 9 directors. The term shall creates an absolute obligation to undertake the powers stated in this legislation. Thank you.
Nancy Brewington.
Gentlemen, I am Nancy Brewington, and I live on Lake McQueenie. Starting with my great aunt on Lake Placid over 70 years is what my family, through 5 generations, has invested in the lakes, McQueenie, and Placid communities. I personally have lived at 8 different locations on the lakes throughout my 70-year lifetime. My children have all moved away only to return here to the area to live as they realized how great it was growing up on Lake McQueenie. We were not rich by any means and lived in a very modest home that required our constant sacrifices for the sake of living on the lake. We never went on vacations as we were content to use what money we had just to be here. My husband has endured 20 years of driving 70 miles a day to and from his job so that our family could be at this lake. Now, at the end of my life, it is a gut-wrenching, empty, helpless feeling to know that the life I have cherished and been ever so thankful to God for every day is now ending after all of the bloods and sacrifices we have endured. My 7-year-old grandson just learned to water ski and wakeboard on this lake, as did his father, grandfather, and great-grandfather going back to the 1940s. What you as GBRA board members have done to our family and hundreds of other families that are not wealthy by any standards is not so much about the loss of property values as it is about the loss of faith and trust in our government to abide by the laws that rule this great state of Texas. You have for over 50 years deceived this community of lakes by not maintaining these dams or sharing information about their conditions so that we could have resolved this situation before it became too little too late. If you would have cared with the same passion that we have for these irreplaceable state parks, you would have followed the rule of where there's a will, there is a way. In these days of modern technology, and in the words of FDR about the Doolittle raid, don't tell me it can't be done. Money is not the issue here. Money is not an excuse. Had we known years ago, we would have had the time to raise the money some way because passion is very powerful. In the favorite phrase of a longtime lake resident, Mary Barlow, if at first we do deceive, oh, what a tangled web we weave. You have taken a remorseless attitude of blameless arrogance by not accepting responsibility. Shame on you for not caring enough and being a disgrace to Texas. Here's your $1 for your damn deal.
Ralph Miller.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Ralph Miller. I've lived on Guadalupe Lake 45 years, and I've gone through some travesties of the floods of 98, 2002, and 2010, and those were God's problems to us. We corrected and did what we had to do to fix up the problem. But the problem we have today is man-made. And it can be resolved if we all put our heads together and think about how we can fix this problem. When you drain the lake 18 inches back in October, I haven't had the ability to get my boat out of the boathouse. I don't have any water. And I've waited patiently for you to return the water back to the lake as you said you were going to do. That hasn't happened. So what am I supposed to do when you drain the lake completely? Am I supposed to let my boat hang up there forever? And I'm sure I'm not the only person in this room with the same problem. Do you actually care about those people that have the same problem I have? I don't think so. If you would have cared, you would have repaired the dams over the 50 years that needed repair. And I asked you to put the water back in the lakes at least 2 weeks before the 16th of September, so people that cannot get their boats out of there, to get them out. That's why we'll be in there forever. So if you care about our community at all, put the water back in so those people can get their boats out, at least. I mean, what good is the boat if there's no water? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
I mean, it's a travesty. And I know there's ways that we can resolve this problem, but we have to think about what we're doing and try to resolve this together, not against each other as is happening now. This is not good, guys. Not good at all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Keith, and Keith, I can't quite make out your last name. It starts with an S, with the McQueenie email address.
Strimple.
Strimple.
You know, I was worried about my time, because y'all said 3 minutes, but I don't think I can miss that. Yeah. Matter of fact, I actually hope I'm able to keep on point, because I get this big ticking thing here. Chairman, directors, staff, thank you very much for this time today. My 3 minutes is, my name is Keith Strimple. I live on Upper Lake Placid. Lived there for 40 years. I'm a licensed engineer, 35 years plus or something like that. And I actually began my career here at GBRA as a young engineer. After nearly about 15 years, I went on to other things, formed my own company, but we're not here to talk about me. I just wanted y'all to understand that I have a little historical perspective on GBRA as well as some technical experience, I hope, because I've been in the engineering community for 35 years. I was going to begin with not arguing, but making the case that a gated structure dam failure where you simulate multiple gates failing at the same time is inappropriate. Because it would be like one hinge on one gate talking to a locking arm on another gate saying, okay, on three we're going to break together. So when you model dam failures, if it's an earthen dam, you would model it that way. If it's a gated structure, you don't, because it just doesn't make sense. So I was glad to hear that GBRA had looked at modeling just one gate failure, because that is logical. So that actually kind of cuts me right down to the other thing that I wanted to point out today, is that during my 15 years, almost 15 years with GBRA, the hydroelectric division was the cash cow. It was that untouchable, money-making mama. The manager at the time was Larry Moltz. Larry Moltz. And everybody knew that if Larry Moltz wanted to buy a fleet of new trucks, he could do that because he had the hydroelectric division, which was a moneymaker for GBRA. What I find interesting is over 20 years ago, GBRA decided to subordinate the hydroelectric rights, the water rights, which was one of the most senior water rights on the Guadalupe River Basin. GBRA decided to subordinate those rights of the hydroelectric division and basically give them to the water supply division, Canyon Lake, so that they could increase the acre feet of water to be able to be sold out of Canyon Lake. So that decision by GBRA basically bankrupted the hydroelectric division, but made the water supply division lucrative. So that's just kind of a little history. I don't think that there are many people in the room that actually even know that. I'm sure Alvin does, and I haven't seen Tom Hill. But, you know, and I only point that out because I keep hearing that the hydro is broke. Well, it's broke because of a decision that was made. So in closing, my ticking is over. I understand that GBRA does not have taxing authority. I totally get that. And I also know that you can't generate proceeds from recreation. Recreation is here. It is real. But it's really not a moneymaker. It's really not a reason to be racing, whatever. Anyway, but I've seen home builders that are already impacted, as well as other businesses that we've heard here today. And additionally, I'm sure I will not be the first in line at the appraisal district to get my taxes reduced. So what I'm asking today is y'all just take a breath and let us look at what I consider a non-dangerous situation. Albeit that people climbing the dam, but Darwin's a good person. But let's just take a breath and let the lake associations work with GBRA. We have the power, we have the finances, we can get this done. That's all I have to say.
Fred Russell.
Gentlemen, my name is Craig Russell. I'm a president and founder of the SS America Memorial Foundation, located at the Lazy Ranch. Are any of y'all familiar with it? I can understand your predicament as a former board of director of Colt, Spring Hills, and Canyon Regional. I can understand the little pickle you're in. With a background in property and casualty, from a very successful family agency in San Antonio in the 70s and 80s, I can understand the risk management side of it. And the E&O, errors and emissions, that goes with it as well. As a former Navy diver on a submarine, I understand corrosion and preventive maintenance extremely well. That all said, I have not put my foot in that river in the last 15 years. So this is not, from my perspective, as one that spends time on the water. But over the last 20 years, my family has dedicated our place as one of the largest frontage owners, 800 feet up Deadman's Creek and 800 feet in the Guadalupe River, to veteran use. Since 2010, over 20,000 active duty soldiers, wounded warriors, have come to our location for respite care. Today, we are the largest location within the Department of Defense for active duty soldiers respite care. Yeah. The respite care is about not just them coming out and sitting around enjoying. The Department of Defense has realized that they have a serious crisis on their hand in the epidemic of suicides with the current day's soldiers. But they have also realized that the most important ingredient is getting them off base due to the largest gated community in the world that the war has created. Now, gentlemen, my family runs all these retreats, and I don't just sit around. We are very active with Army North and South. I sit in what I call resiliency meetings with the commanders and the generals. I work with the chaplaincy who brings them out for these retreats, and we study the resiliency on how to improve the health and well-being of these soldiers. The water has been proven that it is very therapeutic. Now, I'm not here to convince you to keep it up, meaning keep it at the current levels. I understand the predicament and the safety issues. But as a lot of these people have already espoused, what they really want is a direct effort, whatever it might be. This level, whatever level, that allows it to come back. And me as a philanthropist, which is all I am today, we've given it away. Our lodge that sits there for 50 years is now the Chaplaincy Respite Care Retreat. My family no longer lives there. In fact, to give you how passionate we are, we live in a 614-foot mobile home up on the hills so that the others can enjoy this. These people don't want a war, and I won't be part of it. I'll just tell you all right now. I won't be part of raising any money to litigation because I have other things to do with my money for people that need it more. But on the other hand, for you, young man, there's a saying here in Texas, don't piss down my shirt and try to make me feel it's raining. I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing for the soldiers. I just ask that y'all do what you're here to do and work with all these people to bring this thing to fruition rightly and correctly and expediently. Thank you for your time, guys.
Josh Wright.
Good afternoon. I don't know about y'all, but that scared the living daylights out of me. I'm from Texas, and that man scared me, so. I appreciate you guys listening to all of us. I am a little bit emotional. It's hard to fight all this back. I apologize. But I'm just like everybody else in this room with a small business. My whole life was to live on Lake McQueenie. I don't know how I accomplished it at such a young age, but you guys have taken it away, every bit of it. My house, my family, the business. I walk out every day and jump in the lake. I clean people's boats for a living. That's what I do. I absolutely love the lake and the water and everything around it. For you guys to take this away, it's super, super emotional. And I just hope you guys realize the impact that you guys are having on the whole community. There's a lot of morale that's going to dip and a lot of people that are going to go batshit crazy. And it's already started, and a lot of anger is towards you guys, and rightfully so, but you guys can just kind of take all this in and work the best you can with all these lake organizations. I'm even making cups and selling cups that say Save Our Lakes, just to try to raise money for our lake organization and doing everything I can to help out. So if there's anything I can do to help out, then pay you guys money to make this happen, let me know. And if you guys need a security guard to sit down that dam, I got a failed business, so I'll kind of take
And I have one name I can't quite make out here. It looks like it's either Clay or C-A-Y-E with Lake Placid. Last name starts with a P. Okay, and then the other one is John. Last name starts with a C. Can't quite make it out. Yes, sir.
Good day, my name is John Coors. I live at the H4 Lake, Lake Gonzales, and I'm here representing the people from there and also the environment, all the wildlife that's there. As y'all might know, maybe some of y'all haven't been to Lake Gonzales, but there's an awful lot of flats back there that are going to be drained. We got everything from bald eagles to pollywogs, and I'm here representing them as well as all the other working stiffs that can't be here. They'd like to go out on the lake and fish and enjoy the beautiful Texas Guadalupe River, the river of nuts, as the Germans called it when they came up discovering this territory. I'm also representing the homeowners there. We're not as organized as McQueenie and the rest of the organizations, but I have actually 4 concerns. The first, well, let me just say this. When President Trump said drain the swamp, this is not what he meant. And when he talks about infrastructure in the United States, this is what he meant. And we need to address that. It was 50 years ago that the dams were expected lifetime fail. Okay, my first concern is the estuaries, the wildlife. My second concern, our property values are down in the Gulf of Mexico. And I had protested my lakefront property at the county appraisal district. They didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to listen to it. I asked them what were they going to do. They're going to lose a lot of money or else the property owners are going to absorb that loss. So, you know, this should have been dealt with 50 years ago when the dams reached their life expectancy. So, okay, those are 2. Third problem is the silt. We're in a position now we have to do something. We can't do anything about the past. We can only deal with the present and project the future. So the silt that's built up, the previous owner of my property said it used to be 6 to 8 feet deep in the harbor, where it is a foot deep now. That's from Kerrville and Ingram, the topsoil. We need to address that while we're in this situation. And my 4th concern, this business model. When I was 50 years ago in school in civics class, they said, well, GBRA is a quasi-government entity. It's not really government, it's not private. A private business model would not be in this situation today. Thank you all.
I don't have anyone else signed in, but if you would like to make a public comment, feel free to approach.
Please, come on up.
Just briefly, I keep asking and going around and talk. My name is Steve Johnson. I had a business here in town, and I have lakefront property on Lake Placid. And I keep asking the politicians or the people who represent me and my constituents, asking about ways and means of why we're not doing phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, phase 5 of how to fix our dams. Can't seem to get any answers. I'm not a real smart person, but we know that we went out and inspected Dunlap. We finally figured out, and thank you, board, for even considering it, because y'all were going to debar the lakes without even knowing. Thank you, board, for even considering it, because at least we know what went wrong now. And there's an easy way of finding this stuff out. We can lower each lake one by one in time. There's a process called NDI. I talk to people about NDI. I've talked to my politicians, my constituents, and no one wants to bring NDI up. It's called non-destructive inspection or imaging. It's done on the airplanes every day. They x-ray the wings for failed areas in the metal fatigue. They do it. It's not uncommon. They do it on bridges. They determine the metal safeness of the bridges. But for somehow, no one wants to answer me saying, let's check into lowering one dam at a time. If these dams are so unsafe, don't you want to know? Let's do an NDI inspection on each dam, one by one. Let's lower them. Let's inspect them. Let's x-ray them. You don't have to go down in a scuba diving to use this equipment. But everybody says, oh, it must be expensive because no one brings it up. No one wants to check into it. These dams, at least we would know if they're safe or not. And you do phase 2, you do one inspection at a time, a proper inspection. And when I say a proper inspection, I mean a transparent inspection. Let's see it on the newspaper. Let the people know what's going on. For somehow, not keep it at GBRA board or whatever and keep it quiet. Let's find out what the real problem is. When we found out the real problem, then we know which dams need fixed immediately. When we fix that, when we know what's wrong with the dams, we can fulfill our obligation of safety. Somebody yells, the sky is falling. Let's find out where the sky is falling at. Let's ignore it. So each dam could be NDI'd in a proper sequence. We'd know which ones were unsafe. Bring them back up. Work on the ones that are unsafe and slowly build toward that phase 5 in replacing these dams. You know, GBRA actually kind of built a monstrosity here, which was great. They came into our community, built, these lakes worked out great. And first of all, they were built in 29, 30, 31, 32. I know that. And there was a great aspiration, hydro dams, which is now what everybody's trying to get back to. When you look back at hydro dams, you start realizing that that's really one of the best energies we can have. The problem we've had with these hydro dams, they were never updated. No one ever spent money on them. If you go up to Starkey Dam up at Marble Falls, the one LCRA has, the large dam, and they put 2 turbos in it, 2 upgraded turbines that produce a lot of power, that help provide power to Marble Falls. What happened? If you don't spend money, you don't make money. Being in business for years and years, you buy equipment, a fryer or whatever, you depreciate that equipment off over 5 or 6 years. My only question is I got a feeling the dams are depreciated completely down now. You cannot take money from the other sources of GBRA and use the hydros as a loss factor anymore. So wash your hands of it. Don't wash your hands of it. There's means and ways of fixing this. We got to work as a team. We don't need to divide. What I'm scared about dividing was anything, because I know what your plans are. I know what their plans are. They're planning on building a new place in New Braunfels. And what will happen to this place? Gone. And we will have we will lose GBRA completely. We'll lose all the employees. That breaks down to this community of sales tax dollars, schools. It will kill us. But yet it's so important. The water rights are so important to take away Seguin and Guadalupe County and give to New Braunfels. I asked you, and I'll implore you, just let's look at this. There's ways to do this. A few people at GBRA flatly will tell you, we don't want the dams anymore. The impression is that. Work with us? I don't believe they're working with us. I believe the board has the power. I've called the governor's office. I've asked for a group of people from the governor's office to come down here. I believe the governor needs to get involved to see what. I talked to a woman named Julia Franks in the office. And she flatly told me, I was 45 minutes on the phone, very nice lady. And she flatly told me, we're getting 2 stories. I said, well, yeah, you're getting GBRA's story and you're getting the public story. Bring a task force down. Let's evaluate the big picture. Let's see what the truth is. Transparency is the best policy. If everybody's been so transparent, why do they wait a day or a week? Why do they go behind the scenes and tell them we're going to dewater the lake and then bring people back in and tell us again? We want transparency. I asked the governor's office for transparency. Even on your board, I want transparency, and I especially want it on GBRA's board. Thank you for your time.
My name is Kyle Kutcher. I'm the Guadalupe County Judge. Chairman, board members, thank you for allowing everybody to get up and address their concerns. We at the county agree that safety is paramount. It is more important than anything else, and agree that this is a difficult situation that doesn't have easy answers. I understand that there are additional ways that we could find to mitigate some of the safety concerns, potential loss of life. I've met with GBRA multiple times. I understand this man has the weight of the world on his shoulders, and it's not easy. I'll tell anybody in this room and argue with anybody, it's not easy to be in that kind of situation. But I also feel like it's come to a point where everybody's saying, okay, the potential is there, and it is, but there are limitations and challenges that prevent enforcement at the local level, at the state level, to keep people out of these areas. It's not going to be easy. It is going to be a challenge. It is an uphill battle. Is it impossible? No, it's not. I don't feel like we've exhausted every possible avenue and opportunity to look at making these safe, even up to the point of kicking everybody off the water during a potential inspection to see if that's an opportunity. We've had these discussions in the past, and there were limitations with those. But at the same point, in the last couple of days, we've gotten additional measures of support from different individuals. You got State Representative Kimple that was on the phone and in the office of the Director of Parks and Wildlife. Talked to the sheriff yesterday. Marine officers. There's other things that possibly could be done. We've had those, and there were, again, challenges and limitations, but I feel like we didn't work through every one of those options to get to a point where everybody said, no way, it's not possible, it's not going to work. We have a commitment from our county attorney to rewrite documentation that is enforceable in a court in Guadalupe County that possibly could be enforced. We haven't worked through all those details. What I'm asking for today is a commitment about the possibility of GBRA as a board, as a general manager, to work through those discussions prior to the 16th of September and see if there is a way that we can allow some additional time, even by kicking people off of the water, everybody, don't care if you're a homeowner or not, to see if additional inspection could be done and if it really is safe, maybe some of the other stuff. And folks, I'm not making any promises. Even if that is a possibility, we could get back to this point just a few short weeks from now and say, look, here's a detrimental limitation and factor that can't be overcome. This is why it's not going to work. But again, I feel like we haven't got to that point yet. The other thing I want to mention real quick in closing is I don't want to focus on the businesses and all the economic impact and all those things. We are concerned about water wells, shallow wells, drinking water. GBRA working with individuals that may lose that drinking water like it did with Dunlap Field, where we had to get emergency management to go out and get donations of water, place it at the fire department, and then in turn the county contacts Springs Hill and the water supplier to see if they could get water meters hooked up, if financing was available. I think some of those things need to be thought about and addressed by GBRA prior to a dewatering happening so people aren't negatively affected, and there are other potential health and safety hazards that come up. Last comment, I apologize for taking so much time. We've got a situation where I don't want to criticize, because we all have to be partners in this moving forward, no matter what it looks like long term. Everybody needs to remember that. We don't need a war. We've got commitments from GBRA, whether it's injunctions, temporary restraining orders, all those things. There's a commitment to be partners moving forward, and I understand that and appreciate that. But at the same time, putting the weight of a decision like this on a single person's shoulders, no matter who the general manager is, doesn't seem like the best structure to it. It feels like it should be board consideration and action based on a recommendation from the general manager. So there's a good cross-section of people with different backgrounds that are accountable to the public and who they represent, so all factors can be considered. I would appreciate it if y'all would consider that. Thank you.
Good morning, gentlemen. It's good to see y'all again. Everybody in here, it's good to see y'all. John Kemple, State Representative, Guadalupe and Wilson counties. You've heard it. Don't do it. Let's get this away. Let's work together. Judge and I have worked, Kevin and I have worked, we've worked with y'all. I've been on Mr. Johnson, I've been on the phone with the governor's office 5 times in the last 48 hours. I've talked to Texas Parks and Wildlife for 2 hours yesterday afternoon. We can get this done without lowering it. and we can understand what it's truly going to do to this community, to all our communities. Let's go forward with that in mind, keeping together as a team going forward, knowing that Cal and I, Mayor, are part of that, completely transparent. People are calling me, please be patient if I get back to you, when I get back to you. Jordan, I did get back to you. But she's like a little sister, so I'm not worried about that. But anyway, going forward, let's really think about September 16th and what that means. Thank you.
Chairman, board members, thank you for your patience today. I know this is tough. It really is. It's a tough situation. And I want to thank all these great people with all their ideas. I think you heard a lot of creativity from a lot of people here. And what I hope and I pray for is the fact that we don't start talking past each other and shouting at each other, that we can actually work together and come to some agreement. And I think some of these guys have incredibly great ideas how we can save money and how we can get this thing done. And I know we've got, I think, state support now with what Mr. Kemple has said and what the county judge has said with the local people. I think we can get this done. Keep it safe. It means so much to our great community of Seguin, this body of water that's flowing right behind you over here. And I appreciate, again, your patience to hopefully listen to what these folks have to say and act on it and keep our river flowing. Thank you so much.
Sorry, just something I forgot, looking at with y'all and everybody out here. In November, constitutional amendment time, vote for Prop 8. Just do it. I'll explain the rest later, just do it.
Are there any other people that would like to speak? Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to ask, about 3 months ago, there was a posting on your website. You've been working to fix the dam at Nolte Lake, Meadow Lake, and there was a post that this was going to be finished and ready to go in mid-May. What happened to all those repairs that were done on Nolte Dam? If you were ready to call it done, isn't it done now? Can't we just say it's fixed and then move on to fix another one? I don't understand. Yeah, it's been dropped at 4 feet. Is there an answer?
Sure.
Good.
It is not safe for our crews or our contractors to go back in there and finish the repairs. After Dunlap failed, we ceased all work because what we thought we were addressing is not what failed at Dunlap. We cannot address what failed at Dunlap or any of the other ones without a complete, basically starting over from scratch. So, Mr. Chairman, just to kind of wrap up some of this, I hear everyone. It's terrible. I get it. That's fine. Okay, that's fine. Really, it was, even if we decided to do something different, we have to recognize that we've had 2 of the 6 fail in 3 years. If we didn't do something, it's going to happen anyway. So we are committed. I will talk to anyone, answer any questions. We hear you on the transparency. We will keep putting out information as fast as we can, answer every question, put those questions on the website, and we are committed. This is not something we just started working with. We started working with the lake associations over 3 years ago. So they've been wonderful, and we're all moving this thing in the right direction. But it's not going to be quick. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take some time. And I'll pause there, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I do want to thank everybody for coming. We heard a lot of things. The board heard a lot of things that are uncomfortable to listen to. And I appreciate your passion And just, as Kevin said, we are working with the lake associations to come up with a solution. Well, we believe that we are. I'm sorry that you don't feel that way. But in any event, are there any other comments? All right, yes ma'am.
I think that there's been a lot, and I wasn't planning to speak, but there's been a lot of things offered here today. And I think that the problem is that we don't have ample time to get those taken care of by September 16th, wherever that date came from. But I have only been like a short time, but I will tell you, if you want to know what this community is capable of, hang around after a flood. Because everybody, it doesn't matter if you're on the Queenie or Placid or St. John's. We will all work together to fix it. But don't give us just until September 16th. That's what we're asking.
Thank you. If there are no other public comments, I will recess until 12:15. All right, 12:20, and I will reconvene the board meeting. Let me begin by reading the standard comments on public comments. We've already had a lot of comments, but there may be issues and things that aren't on the agenda that someone would like to bring up. So I'm just going to read it verbatim. This portion of the meeting is intended for comments from the public on non-agenda related items. Please limit comments to 3 minutes. To address the board, please sign and completely fill in attendance sheet maintained at the entrance to the building where the meeting is being held. No responses or action may be taken by the board during public comments. To address the board related to an item posted on the agenda for action or discussion, please indicate the item you wish to comment on using the attendance sheet. The board will call individuals to make comments at the appropriate time. With that, let's go to the consent items. Does any board member have an item they would like to hold out to discuss? If not, I would entertain a motion for all.
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Let's see, we've dealt with number 7. Number 8, the general manager, CEO, and staff may report on. Do you have a report? Reports.
Mr. Chairman, we don't. We'll have a couple for you next month, but not this month.
Very well. All right, let's move into the action items. Number 9, consideration of and possible action authorizing the general manager, CEO, to negotiate and execute a contract with the lowest responsible bidder for biosolids disposal services for the Hayes and Caldwell County operations.
Mr. Chairman, board members, GBRA operates several wastewater treatment plants and water plants in Hayes and Caldwell County. And as part of the treatment processes, we produce sludge from the wastewater plants and from the San Marcos water treatment plant. So we also, some of these plants include the Lockhart wastewater treatment plant, the Buda plant, the Sunfield and the Shadow Creek wastewater plants, and also the San Marcos water treatment plant. So they all produce sludge, and from time to time we have to dispose of those sludges. And the item before you is a proposal to negotiate a contract with the lowest responsible bidder to haul these biosolids, we call them biosolids or sludge, to a land application site or a landfill or another TCQ approved facility. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about that, Mr. Chairman.
I'll entertain a motion. So moved. Do I have a second? Any discussion? Questions?
Is this something new?
No, sir. No, sir. We're currently in an extension part of the contract that's over in a couple of months, and so we want to go ahead and the contractor has told us that he has to raise his prices, and because of that, we'll have to negotiate a new contract and put it out for bid.
These are deemed not suitable for other uses, or you're having to pay people to take this off your hands?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There are some, we have in our rural utilities division, we haul our own biosolids to a land application site where a farmer grows hay. So we have facilities, so that's why that's not part of this project or this contract. We just have that capability in Hays and Caldwell County.
Because it hasn't been explored, or why, I mean, what's the difference between one place and another?
Well, if a contractor comes to us and they have a land application site that's permitted by TCQ, we entertain that.
So it has to be permitted by TCQ?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir. Because it's biosolids.
If someone came to you after the contract was signed, can you say, in that contract, can you decide to give it to someone that had found a TDCQ facility that had hay in a local area? Would they give up part of that, or that would not be possible?
I would leave that up to that contractor. If he wanted to negotiate that with that farmer, that would be fine.
Okay, so it wouldn't be from us. If you would then tell them to negotiate with you?
Yes, sir.
And how long is the contract for?
Well, we have a 2-year contract with several years of extensions if GBRA and the contractor agrees to it. So up to 3 1-year extensions. So the first part of it's 2 years, then we can negotiate up to 3 more 1-year extensions.
Any other questions? I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Consideration of and possible action approving and accepting the GBRA biennial investment policy and portfolio review. Randy.
Good morning, Chairman Padillo and board members. Your investment policy approved by the board does require an outside review of the investment portfolio every 2 years. And so we did contract with Hilltop Securities Asset Management to perform a review of the investments for fiscal year 2017 and 2018. Their report did come back and share with you a few of the observations as well as some of the recommendations. They did note that we were in compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act. That's Texas Government Code Chapter 2256. They identified minimal credit risk and that we had sufficient liquidity, and also that we were well diversified within a number of different securities. They did identify that interest earned during fiscal year 2017 was actually above benchmarks in alignment with U.S. Treasuries, but lagged behind in fiscal year 2018. That was due to a number of different activities that we were involved with during fiscal year 18. We didn't have as much time and attention spent on investing the funds and trying to generate the highest amount of interest earned associated with that. That was one of their recommendations, was to look for ways to increase that interest earned. And so we've had several internal discussions and made some changes and are continuing to evaluate opportunities to improve that. One of which I shared with you at a quarterly update back in June, where we renegotiated the interest rate that we're gaining on our bank deposits. And so we've already addressed that. Their other recommendation was some minor wording changes in the investment policy, and that was related to some changes in legislation. And so that's actually included in the investment policy changes that we're bringing forward to you on the next agenda item.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
Discussion.
Question.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned Hilltop, and I believe it was in my notes, Mr. Jackson, during the questioning and comment part of item number 7, brought up us hiring a lobbyist at Hilltop. Can you just address that?
Absolutely.
Is this the confusion here with Hilltop, and this is the only thing they're doing for us?
Hilltop is an investment banking firm. They also have an arm for asset management, and that's the group that we had contracted with. Hillco is the gentleman, comment that the gentleman mentioned. They are a lobbying firm, separate and apart, two separate and distinct entities.
Okay, so there's no confusion.
No connection. Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 11, consideration of and possible action approving a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Guadalupe-Blanco River Authority adopting Board Policy 403, investment policy, and the investment strategy contained therein.
All right, thank you. Again, this is a requirement under the investment policy for the board to take a look at the investment policy on an annual basis. And so we've taken an opportunity to really take a deep dive into what's included in the policy and to look for opportunities to make some modifications and perhaps improve it a little bit. Included in that, in the resolution, which is a bit of a change from in the past, Public Funds Investment Act does require adoption of the policy by resolution as opposed to action. So we've made that adjustment. We have increased the maximum threshold for investment pools and money market accounts to align with treasuries and agency securities. And we made a few other updates, a creation of an investment committee, and that allows the ability to approve the broker-dealer list, which in the past was a separate action item that you all would approve. We're going to do that as an investment committee. That investment committee will be made up of the individuals that you have designated as investment officers. That's also one addition here. So with your adoption of the resolution, you're re-adopting each year the positions that are associated with the investment protocol. A number of different minor changes as well, but that highlights some of the larger changes. They're all listed in that resolution as well.
Motion?
Move.
Second?
Second.
Discussion?
Did I hear investment committee?
It's an investment committee made up of just the investment officers who are employees of GBRA.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. 12, consideration of and possible action approving a resolution to execute financing agreements with the Texas Water Development Board to close on a portion of the $165,855,000 commitment for the Carrizo Groundwater Supply Project.
Yes, board members, as you know, this project will provide up to 15,000 acre-feet of treated groundwater upon completion of the project, which is scheduled in 2023. That will provide water to 3 different customers: the City of Lockhart, Goforth Special Utility District, and New Braunfels Utilities. Last year was the first sale associated with that construction of that project. That was a little over $58 million. This will be the second round of funding for that in the amount of $40 million. And that is for the construction, continuing the planning and design and finalization of that. We'll have 2 additional sales in 2020 and 2021 as well to finalize that project.
All right, motion please.
So moved.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? 13, consideration of and possible action authorizing the general manager, CEO, to negotiate and execute an amendment to the memorandum of understanding to evaluate regional wastewater treatment options between the City of Bernie and the City of Fair Oaks Ranch and the Guadalupe-Blanco River Authority dated October the 25th, 2018, relating to certain engineering studies.
Good afternoon, Chairman, board members. Back in October, GBRA and City of Bernie and Fair Oaks Ranch entered into an MOU to evaluate disposal and permitting options for a potential regional wastewater treatment plant for the area. That portion of the study was completed. The results were favorable, and each of the entities want to move forward with the next phase to do some additional preliminary engineering that would really look at evaluating potential sites for the regional wastewater treatment plant, conveyance facilities to get the raw wastewater to that site, and conveyance facilities to get to disposal areas and reuse areas, along with potential discharge locations, potential phasing for the treatment plant, and to provide a preliminary layout of the facility. With that, the engineers will be able to develop an opinion of construction cost and an estimate for operation and maintenance cost. The plan is to have this study completed by springtime so that each of the entities, Bernie, Fair Oaks Ranch, and GBRA, can decide if we want to be able to move forward with a regional wastewater treatment plant for that area. Available for any questions.
Motion?
Motion made.
Second. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, looks like number 14 and 15, Mr. Bowles, deal with condemnation. Would you like to go into executive session?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we would. Courtney will have a couple of items on each one of those to talk to the board about legal issues in executive session.
All right, well, let's recess the open session, and I will convene the closed session in about 7 minutes. session at 2:20.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. So under items 14 and 15.
Item 14 is consideration of and possible action approving a resolution by the Guadalupe-Blanco River Authority declaring a public necessity for the acquisition of certain fee estates, permanent easements, and temporary construction easements, engaging the use of eminent domain related to the construction, operation, and maintenance of a wastewater collection system for the public use of providing wastewater services to customers of Guadalupe-Blanco River Authority. The pipeline shall be located in portions of Guadalupe County, over, across, and upon private property and public property, and beginning at a point south of Zip Road between FM 1044 and the Guadalupe River, and north of the Bandit subdivision. Such easements are to be located over, across, upon, and under certain parcels of real property located in parts of the J.S. Johnson Survey, number 47, Ignatius S. Johnson Original Survey, Greenberry Pate Survey, William Bracken Survey, Sarah DeWitt Survey, Lakeside Pass Subdivision, Butterfly Acres Subdivision, Oasis at Lake Dunlop, a subdivision, all in Guadalupe County, Texas. The Guadalupe-Blanco River Authority shall designate the general manager, CEO, as the chief administrative official with authorization to initiate condemnation proceedings. This resolution shall authorize any and all lawful, necessary, and incidental and appropriate action by the general manager, CEO, staff, agents, and attorneys retained and in-house, and engineering and technical consultants in the institution, prosecution, and conclusion of condemnation proceedings to acquire any such needed fee estates, permanent easements, temporary construction easements, and related rights of ingress and egress that cannot be acquired through negotiation with the landowner, which shall include surveying for archaeological, environmental, and linear purposes to define, specify, and secure such property interests, and ratifying and affirming all acts and proceedings heretofore done or initiated by the chief administrative official, employees, agents, and attorneys of GBRA to acquire such property interests. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Brings us to number 15, consideration of and possible action approving a resolution by the Guadalupe-Blanco River Authority declaring a public necessity for the acquisition of court orders requiring the current owners of certain properties in Guadalupe County to grant GBRA, its representative agents, and contractors certain temporary restraining orders to obtain entry onto the certain properties for the purpose of making boundary, topographic, environmental, archaeological, geotechnical surveys, and appraisals in connection with the expansion of the wastewater collection system for the Dunlop wastewater treatment plant.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board of Directors of the Guadalupe-Blanco River Authority declare a public necessity to authorize the General Manager, CEO, if he deems it necessary, to seek court orders to require that current owners allow GBRA's representatives, agents, and contractors entry for the purpose of making boundary, topographic, environmental, archaeological, and geotechnical surveys and appraisals in connection with the expansion of the wastewater collection system for the Dunlap wastewater treatment plant onto the following properties. Parcel 1, Guadalupe County Appraisal District, ID number 66260. Parcel 10, Guadalupe County Appraisal District, ID number 65392. Parcel 11, Guadalupe County Appraisal District, ID number 65385. Parcel number 13, Guadalupe County Appraisal District number 68605. Parcel 15, Guadalupe County Appraisal District, ID number 169487. Parcel 16, Guadalupe County Appraisal District, ID number 65501. Number 17, Guadalupe County Appraisal District, ID number 58634. Parcel number 34, Guadalupe County Appraisal District, ID number 68611. Parcel 37, Guadalupe County Appraisal District ID number 68625. Parcel 41, Guadalupe County Appraisal District ID number 65439. Parcel 50, Guadalupe County Appraisal District ID number 65605. Parcel 54, Guadalupe County Appraisal District ID number 65418. Parcel number 55, Guadalupe County Appraisal District ID number 127614. Parcel 56, Guadalupe County Appraisal District ID number 127581. Parcel 65, Guadalupe County Appraisal District ID number 65618. Parcel 66, Guadalupe County Appraisal District ID number 166572. And parcel 69, Guadalupe County Appraisal District ID number 111912.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. That brings us to item number 16. Consideration of and possible action approving the fiscal year 2020 work plan and budget, including rates and compensation tables for the following divisions, and giving authority to the general manager CEO to expend funds pursuant to the budget, as well as execute contracts consistent with those expenditures within limitations allowed under policy. Do I need to read all of the, I think.
I'm going to defer that to our
Thinking about it. I am going to leave that, and you can thank Mr. Bowles for not having me read many divisions.
Good afternoon, board members. I know you've had a long day, so I've got to be brief in my comments this afternoon. I do think it's important because there's been a lot of dialogue in the public and some of the comments that were shared earlier today about the number of different divisions that we have within GBRA. And that's perhaps a misunderstanding that folks on how we work. But there are 30 different divisions within GBRA. 13 of those are budget to actual, meaning the revenues are sufficient to cover the expenses, and those are balanced at the end of the fiscal year. And the unit of service, which are based on rates that we charge customers. But all of these systems are supported by revenue that's provided by paying customers for the particular services that they receive. Generally speaking, as expenditures increase, the revenues need to be adjusted to accommodate that increase as well. But I did want to make sure we pointed that out for those who might be watching at home. As reported to you last month, we do have a number of really large projects. Any one of these would be a lot to undertake, but all these at one time are in different phases of implementation. Some of them have been discussed for a number of years. You approved earlier today the second round of funding for the Carrizo groundwater supply project, and so that project is continuing to move forward. But all these are a number of high visibility and large-scale projects that we're involved with. I did want to point out to you that during the discussions in preparation of it, during the budget process, we did go through an elimination process. About $770,000 were removed from the budget based on dialogue and discussions. Some of those were postponed to future years, and some of those we'll have to reevaluate at some point down the road. But I want to make sure that you are aware of that as well. Taking a look at fiscal year 2020 budget for next year, revenues just under $63 million and expenses associated with that as well. These are the same numbers that you saw last month. They do include revenue for hydro and expenses for the hydroelectric division as well. We have not made any adjustments to that as of yet, and we need to make some changes as we move forward and make further decisions. The one change we have made with regard to rate structure is we were previously planning for an increase in the Calhoun County rural water rate, we have decided to maintain the current rate as of now. We're going to reevaluate that and then develop a communication campaign to make sure folks are aware of the changes that will be coming to them in the future. So we may be coming back to you during the fiscal year to make some adjustments to that rate. Comparing budget fiscal year 2020 to the prior year, you see some of the changes in that. Revenues increasing 5.1% and expenses a little bit greater than that. The two new systems that we're bringing into the budget this year is the Bernie ISD, which is a wastewater treatment plant that's actually on the site of a middle school in Bernie ISD. We have a contract with them. It is a budget to actual, which is why the revenues match the expenses. The Griso groundwater supply project is the project that we began billing for in January for those 3 customers. And so we'll continue billing for that, and the expenses associated with that are for year 3 of lease payments to those holders of the leases. In terms of revenue, you can see some of the changes from one year to the next. We did project at the time a decrease in power sales. We have an increase in water sales and some other adjustments, primarily in the wastewater area, which we'll talk about in just a moment. One of the line items on the previous slide, I apologize I didn't mention that, miscellaneous and grant income line there is highlighted in blue. Wanted to spend a little bit more time talking about that because that does include grant revenue. And grant revenue comes from federal and state sources. These are the only revenues that we receive from federal and state. All of our revenues, as I mentioned, are derived from customers in those systems for the services that we provide for them. We do not receive any state appropriations and do not have the ability to generate tax revenue as well. This federal and state grant revenue is associated with competitive and discretionary grants. We have to go through an application process and be vetted against other applications. These are primarily for water and monitoring and testing. From year to year on a percentage basis, they're very similar. One adjustment in one area might have an impact on another, even if there's no changes. But by and large, revenues around 52% are in the water sales division, or water supply, as we call it. And that increase is driven by an addition of the Womack Right water purchase. Also, the increase in the canyon rate from 147 to 151 per acre foot. Revenue from the Griso groundwater supply project, and increases in pipeline revenue to help cover some of those increasing maintenance costs associated with that system. Just to highlight the wastewater portion as well, continued growth in that area. We're projecting 469 new connections next year. The bulk of that is in the Dunlap and Forest area, but there are other divisions that will continue seeing growth as well. And then we made some adjustments to the interest income projections. Moving over to the expense side, you see some changes in personnel and operating supplies and services primarily. From one year to the next, those two categories continue to be the highest expenditure categories. And that's driven by the fact that we're looking at adding 15.5 additional FTEs, which we'll show in just a moment. And then on the operating cost side, we have increased utility costs and increased water deliveries that are associated with that increased flow. We had some additional costs for engineering and for legal costs, and then the groundwater leases spoke to a moment ago. In terms of capital outlay, one of the things we're looking at doing to help on the preventive side is to identify and prevent some potential blockages by purchasing a hydro jetter truck and a video system, and hiring some staff associated with implementing that program. And then a few other ancillary capital outlay purchases as well. The staffing additions are 15.5 for next year. Most of those are in the water sales of the general division. As we continue to grow as an organization, there's more and more support needed for that growing operation. You do have some additional positions in the Canyon Gorge as well, and a belt press operator in the road division. Looking at designated and capital improvement program, there are a number of items that are carried over. This is intended to capture projects that are implemented over a multi-year So you see previous funding column in there, and you also see some current and future columns. The water intake modifications, that larger dollar amount of $4 million is related to continuing that supply to the rural regional raw water distribution system through the Lake Dunlop Canal. One of the other additions that you see on there is the Crestview wastewater treatment plant. Recall we purchased a system from another entity, and this will provide for the transportation of that system, that package plant, and the setup and engineering to make sure that's implemented. This slide continues the designated and capital improvement program. These are bond-funded projects, all of which we've discussed with you at one point or another. And so you see some projections on the costs associated with those, and many of these systems will be supported by rates that are charged by customers. And the Bronfman's office is the only one that perhaps would be funded through the water sales division in general as well. And just the last slide to reiterate what we've talked about before is that the GB hydroelectric system has been in the red for a number of years. This slide demonstrates the last 10 years. Electricity generated during that time frame has fluctuated up and down. But even in the good years, it barely breaks even. And there has been a need to use funds from outside that division to help supplement that. With your approval of the last couple of years, that's come from some other different sources to the tune of about $13.2 million just in the last few years. Some of those dollars are still being spent and planned for as part of the eventual replacement of those systems. Now, I'll pause there to see if you have any questions on the budget.
I will say your budget workshops again this year were very, very helpful. That was a great discussion and explanation. Thank you for working together. I agree with everything.
And I want to make a comment about slides 8, 9, 10, 12, and 20. All had comments about the hydro, and I appreciate that explanation today, especially since we're live streaming this to folks who could not attend, because that's important for them to know that the effect that particular hydro, the electric system is having on the impact of GBRA, not just this year, but years past, have not been always positive. So thank you for doing that.
All right. Do we have a motion? Second? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
It's gonna rain someday, right?
It looks like we need it. There we go. Speaking of rains, what you would expect to see this time of year, over the past 30 days, you would expect to see 2 to 3 inches of average rainfall. This shows you the next slide. As if you need a reminder of the percent of that rainfall we've actually received, in most of the basin, it's less than 5% or 5 to 10% of that normal rainfall. So, especially look around Canal County, has received 0 rainfall. Most of the basin less than an inch. So, extremely dry. Mary found this graphic that pretty well sums it up. Across the country, it's just dry and hot right now. So, as you were seeing the hydrologic response you would expect from that is Canal Spring. The middle line kind of shows the average spring flow, so we're still slightly above average, but we're dropping pretty quick here in the summer months. See the same response at the EAA's J17 well. We've gotten down to a level of 666 feet. Right around 660 is where you start having the Edwards Aquifer Authority drought management stages kick in. So we're getting close to those trigger levels, but it's still not yet. This shows you the canyon inflow for the year. This is a spring branch gauge. The kind of orange dots on the bottom are the median flows. So we've been Very fortunate this year that we stayed above median flows all year long, but now we're able to get down pretty close to those levels. Currently, we've got 85 CFS flowing in the canyon. And so, right now, we've kind of been through several of the agreements that dictate the minimum flows out of canyon. The Guadalupe River Trout Unlimited agreement's controlling right now, requiring us to release 150. So since we've only got 80 coming in, we have started to draw down below that elevation 909 for the first time, I guess, this year. But still very close to it. Despite all that, conditions are still, with all the wet period that we're following, very good for water supply. We're right around median conditions, if not slightly above in the upper basin for the entire basin. So conditions are still very favorable for water supply despite the drought. Looking forward, Weather Service is predicting above average chances for rainfall for most of Texas, but surprisingly, even with above average chances for rainfall, there is still quite a bit of drought development expected for South Texas. So I guess that tells you that even above average rainfall won't wet things up for us. We're going to need a good amount of rain to take care of all the dry conditions we've had, but everything still looks good for water supply. That's it. Can't go on the last slide, but that's it.
Thank you. Do we have any other business? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. All right, hearing no objection, we are adjourned.